Okay, you guys, this is Life Lessons Learned, and we're actually going to talk about lessons you should learn as an adult if you haven't already. Now, this is titled Know Your No. And let's just be honest, the very first word most of us learned as a toddler was no. No, no. So it was used, of course, to protect us from getting hit by a car, from getting burned, from choking, eating candy that could choke us. So there was a reason for the nose that we had. However, as we grew older, we began to become people pleasers and we started to not say no when we should. And you guys know what I mean by that. Sometimes your intuition tells you, I really don't want to do that. But they're expecting me to. Or if only I had said no to drugs or alcohol or to going with my buddies to rob a store. Now, those are major ones, of course, but we also have lots of little mini no's that we should do throughout the day, sometimes at work, sometimes in relationships, and sometimes, yeah, let's face it, with family members. So, I'm going to talk about how often I actually say no, but I'll give you the scenarios that these no's came into being, and you'll be able to see why. The purpose of this video is to begin to empower you guys to be okay with saying no. Now, that being said, also like to preface that with you do not have to explain your no. Your no in itself is a reason. So don't let people goad you into saying, but why? Why don't you want to do that? So we're going to start with this first no that I'll share with you. And this one may be difficult for some of you guys to hear because of the, I guess, sensitivity of the situation. So I was getting married, and we're not going to even go through all of that, okay? If you haven't watched my red flags in my marriage series, go back and look at those. But you don't need to see those to watch this one. So my mother and father were divorced, and just so you guys know, they had been married and divorced, and then they married again and divorced again. So just want to say that up front. And we meaning my siblings and I, did not spend a lot of time with my dad because, well, I don't even know what the reason would be, because he actually lived within walking distance of our home with our mom. So a lot of times we would just walk over to his house. Now, keep in mind, if a baby boomer says walking distance, we're talking probably 6, 7 miles back in the day when you could walk places and, be with your siblings and do that. Now, when people say something is in walking distance, they mean from their house to their mailbox. I get it. Okay. Just want to say that. So, my dad, well, let me say this. My dad had not met my future husband at the time that I was going to be getting married. And he and my mother had, on again, off again, amicable relationship, which is fine. It didn't affect me. Well, people say, your childhood did affect you. Okay. But she had, asked if, he would be invited to the wedding. And I said, of course he's invited. I mean, I'm not estranged from him or anything. It's not like wasn't cordial with him or I didn't have like a close relationship with him, but I would not disinvite a parent to a wedding. Wait, if we're talking about saying no, maybe some of you would do that, depending on your situation. So she was really excited about that. But then, and I'll just say it, you know how parents are. They want, kids to get along with the other parent and, they want things to be kind of traditional. She led him to believe that I would be asking him to give me away because, of course, that's what, fathers do. I said fathers. I mean, you know what I'm saying. Fathers that are fathers do. But I did not have that kind of connection with him. And also to make matters even more sealed, I had already asked one of my brothers to give me away. So I was close to this particular brother, and he was really excited, and he couldn't believe what they would have that honor. So I don't know where the miscommunication came at because again, I hadn't said anything to my dad. So let's say it came from my mom, other source, okay? So on the day of the wedding, my dad came up to me. I was about to go down the aisle, and he said, "Hey, am I giving you away?" And I was like, "No, she didn't." So, and I'm not a mean person, but you guys know I am upfront and responsible and accountable, for me. And so I just looked at him and I smiled and I said, "Oh, no." I said, "You gave me away years ago. Didn't see you. You didn't come by. Wasn't too happy when I visited." I mean, he was okay with us visiting, but he was also okay with us not. So I was like, "No, that ship has kind of passed long ago." So, I politely told him that that was not the plan and that I had already asked one of my brothers to do so. And, that he was, of course, still welcome, to be there. And that's what happened with that. So, my lesson here, or my moral here, is to let you know that it doesn't matter at what point you're saying your no. Some people may have said, well, he thought he was going to walk her down the aisle. She should have just said yes. That's not how my life goes, okay? I control it and let others control it. So, and I was okay with doing that. And as I said, I wasn't rude or anything. I was just surprised that he had even asked. I was like, what's your name again? But anyway, that's that one. Now, the second no I'm going to share with you has to do with my professional life. And so I was working at a mutual fund company during this time. And you know how the companies recently they look for ways for employees to get like bonuses and gifts if you do carpooling or if you agree to ride your bike to work or some kind of way to save fuel or anything like that. Now, as you guys know, I'm I'm called Princess Prompt for a reason. I like to be where I'm going to be earlier than I need to be, just so I can get my bearings. I know that I'm not late, that kind of thing. I've been like that as a kid. Okay, so you're going to hear the whole story of the time thing with me later. Um, and so, people were filling out the forms and everything, and I always fill mine out. No, again, no, no, I'm, I'm not interested in carpooling. And I just like getting myself to work and getting myself back home. Now, the thing about that is because there are so many issues when it comes to carpooling. If someone is not going to meet you at the spot, how are you going to know until it's, sometimes too late? They would have to call or text you and, all of that. And then everyone in my book would have to be willing to be to work early. I don't know how else to say that. And most people don't like to be at work early. They like to start at 8, get there at 7:59, go to the water cooler, go get coffee, run to the restroom, and they're probably starting their day at 8:15 or 8:20. I don't give a darn. It's not my company, it's not my business. I know where I need to be at 8. Okay. But I just said those points to say that when you see that people have that pattern, what in the world would make you think that they're going to be on time for this carpooling deal? That's me. So I, filled out all no and everything. And there were a group of people, about 4 of them, and we lived in one city and worked in another. So they would meet in the city that we lived in, and then they would, switch, get into cars and do that kind of thing. So, and that was fine. But one of the ladies came over to me and she was like, "Hey, I noticed that you didn't sign up for the carpool." I was like, "Great notice. Yeah. Okay." She was like, "Well, the ones that we would be going with are really close to you and you would be meeting at whatever place. I don't know." And then your stop would be the last stop. So we would all be ready and everything, and you could carpool with us. And I said, "Hey, very polite. No, thank you. I'm not interested." You know, some people don't know how to take no. So she looks at me and she goes, "Well, what do you mean you're not interested in it? I'm talking about carpooling. You can save money, you can save gas." I said, "I'm just looking to save time. Okay. I don't want to be with you late folks." But she then said, "Well, I'm talking about saving on gas money though. Unless you make $1 million a week, you can afford the gas to get back and forth to work." Let me tell you guys something. I'll be nice. I don't count your money, and you darn sure would not be counting mine, okay? And I'm thinking to myself, now, all this time I've been getting back and forth to work. What makes you think all of a sudden I don't have gas money to get me to work? Hello. So what I said was, and I do remember I'm trained in conflict negotiation, peace, mediation, all the things that this was years ago. I had to do when I worked in the high school. So I was okay with it. So I said to her, "Please step away from my desk. You've asked me a question as if I wanted to carpool. I've answered your question, and that's it." And so then she said, "Well, can you at least tell me why?" Why would I tell you why? But I didn't go there. What I said was, "I haven't explained anything to anyone since I left my mother's home at 18. And I darn sure won't be explaining to you why I won't or will do something." So she, by this time, she's at my desk. So, and she's standing up, and of course, I'm sitting down. And the conversation had gotten not like yelling or anything like that, but she was getting louder. So people were looking at her and looking at me. I didn't bat an eye. I was like, "You're dismissed." And so she dejectedly went back to her desk. And then one of my friends from that job came over to my desk and she said, "Girl, I just started eating my candy and looking at the walls." I said, "Looking at the walls?" She said, "Yeah, like Celie in The Color Purple when that lady was throwing her dishes, her food at the wall. I was just looking to see what color the wall was going to be." But I have to say to all of you right here and now, I never initiate conflict. And I know never is kind of a strong word, but I just don't do that. Usually, when I've had words with someone, or there's a disagreement that I've had, or some type of a dispute, it has to do with people coming over to my desk, or knocking on my door, or stopping me on the street with silly stuff. And I'm always like, I'm just not the one." Okay. So that was kind of a little funny story of the nose, but I was like, You're not going to bully me into joining a carpool. I don't want to do that." So my next one is has to do with my daughters. Okay, so you guys already know I had three daughters. I said had, I mean have. And you already know that if you've watched any of my previous videos, whatever I have them join, I go and volunteer so I can see what's going on, who's running the programs, what type of events they'll have, and to, be there and watch and protect my girls. So at this particular deal, they were signing up to be not the Girl Scouts, but the ones you become before you're a Girl Scout. So I think it's brownies or daisies or something. This is years ago, so help me out here. You can Google it. But and they were between the ages of, I think it was 5 to 10, or whatever the age range is when you're too young to be a Girl Scout and you have to be a brownie or a daisy or whatever. So no big deal. The event was being held at a community center in our neighborhood, so that was always good because the girls and I were able to walk right to it. It was just about maybe, I don't even think it was 2 blocks, like a block and a half. Beautiful community center. And so I went, we signed the girls up, and there were plenty of girls and, parents there getting their kids signed up and everything. But, a lot of parents, would sign their kids up and then they would leave because they probably had other things to do. My thing to do was to be there with my girls. And I was able to do that. So not knocking the parents that, were bringing them in and dropping them off. Perhaps they were working or, doing whatever they do. Well, the first few, and it was, they met twice a week. So the first two times I went, and it's a new program. People have to get acclimated and adjusted and all of that. So I get that. And they had two different instructors in there for the girls. And there were probably 15, maybe 15 to 18 girls altogether. So it was a nice sized group. But remember, they're younger girls. So their, attention span is shorter and that kind of thing. Well, these two instructors, oh my goodness, you guys, and they were young and inexperienced and trying to figure out what this whole group would be, what was going on with it. But they did not, and I mean not, have control of the classroom. So again, remember, I went the first two times, and the girls are all doing what they want to do. They're hollering, they're screaming at each other, they're running around. And my girls are sitting down on the rug like they're supposed to wait for instructions. So, I'm like, and I'm not um, a leader of the group, so I couldn't usurp my authority and say, hey, you guys need to do this or you need to do that. It's the Girl Scouts organization, so they have in place, their leaders. I think they're called leaders. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are. But anyway, so that third time that we were going to go, my girl said, one of my girls said to me, Mom, do we have to go? And I was like, I'm thinking like a parent. It's Girl Scouts. You have honor. They're going to teach you a lot of stuff. And my daughter said, Well, I wish they would. It's not funny. I wish they would teach the other kids to mind the adults. Ah, I was like, yeah, yeah, that's true. And so then another daughter said, "We just don't want to go. It's not any fun." And the kids run around all the time. The teachers are always hollering, "Do we have to? Do we have to become Girl Scouts?" So I thought about it just for a few seconds because we were on our way to go there. So I told them that we would go this last time, and if things hadn't improved, then of course, I would just not sign them out of that particular thing. And you guys, this third time was worse than the first two. It's like each week the girls had learned we don't have to do what they say, so we'll do whatever we want. The parents are gone, so no one else is chastising them, and it's just running wild. So I went up to the two leaders about like midway and with the class, and I said, "Hey, you guys, the girls and I have decided that this isn't the program for them." I said, "But I wish you guys well, and hopefully things, work out for you." And one of the instructors, you won't believe what she said, you guys. And it made, well, I mean, there was nothing I could do about it, but she looked at me and she said, "Ah, hold it together, Jerry. Got to take it." She said, "Miss Brantley, if you and your girls leave, then we won't have anyone that mind us in this classroom." Can you imagine that? And my first thought, and I didn't say it, so I want to let you guys know that, was I am not willing to sacrifice my girls to be among this group to assist you to have someone to mind, to pay attention and do what they're supposed to do. You guys, we cannot sacrifice our kids for foolishness, okay? My girls were used to listening to adults. They were used to doing what they were told. They were used to having authority. And this everybody just running around for an hour and a half until our parents come back. We don't have to listen to the teachers, the instructors, or anyone else. It just didn't work for them, and it sure as heck didn't work for me. But again, as a parent, I was trying to see if maybe they would get at some point more control of the class and everything. So I just apologized to her and I said that's what the problem was, and that my girls weren't comfortable being around such wildness. I mean, such unruliness. They're like, why do you keep taking us here? So you have to know your no. You have to own your no and be okay with your no. Again, you don't have to tell anyone why you have your no. Your no is sufficient in itself. So again, this is life lessons learned. And you know my mantra, knowledge is in the knowing, but wisdom is in the doing. And my other little tidbit is the learning of a lesson is the application of it. So, as you're learning lessons in life, begin to apply them in all areas of your life where they're applicable and see the growth and the improvement that you get to have as a result of that. Now, have I always, of course, been like that? No, but I can tell you this. In my youth and with the experiences that I've had growing up in a family of six, okay, it wasn't a family of six, it was six kids and a mom, so really a family of seven. Okay. And you can count my dad a family of eight, but since they were divorced, it's a family of seven for all practical purposes. And there are many lessons and things that I learned in my youth that I took into my adulthood, but they were always great lessons for me. And they were always things that got me through some difficult times. Now, in my next video, I'm actually going to tell you when I should have said, hell no. And instead, I said yes. That one is going to be for, well, all of these are for mature audiences, but it's going to be something that you would think I would never have done because even when I think about it, I can't believe I did it. And it could have been very detrimental to me health wise. And it could have been very detrimental, should I say life wise? But I'll tell you that in it won't be the next video. It'll be the video after this one. However they're scheduled, you'll see it. But this is Sherry. Please share your stories with me about times when you knew you should have said no, you didn't, and then what resulted from that. Or tell of the time when you did say no and you benefited from it. And begin to be okay with your no and say it more often if applicable. Okay, this is Sherry. Thanks for stopping by. Please like, share, or subscribe if you like, and I'll see you on the next round.